forward to that. So let's look at some of the key issues that came up yesterday. One of them that has raised controversy afterwards is the gold for oil deal and the revelation the vice president made. Clarify for us some of the things he said. He said, indeed, the government had to go into a deal with a businessman because of the state of our economy. And he says the gold for oil deal is our economic messiah. Expatiate on that for us.
Well, I think that to sum it up, we, just as all other countries, Ghana went through its own economic crisis right after the COVID. And within the period of recovery, we had a lot of turbulence. I mean, there is no hiding that between January 2022 and December 2022 was one of the most difficult periods within the last 8 years in terms of the economy. I mean, we had dollar going all the way to about 17, 18, even 20 cedis at some point as of November 2022. We had inflation rising all the way to about 54% and all of that. So we've seen some difficulties. I mean, all other countries alike trying to recover. And it's quite obvious that once our currency is agitated, it affects every aspect of our economy. And because we are heavily import dependent, it always mounts pressure on us. So what the gold for oil basically did was to introduce some sort of a barter trade to reduce our demand for dollar at some point, to be able to reduce the pressure on the dollar. So you realize that in spite of the gold for oil, our currency still suffered a lot of hit. And the point Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is making is that but for the gold for oil, you can imagine the level of hit. Because even with that, look at how much we felt the turbulence. And so without that, it could even have been worse. I mean, the amount of oil we import every month was running in excess of about $400 million every month. What it means is that every month you need to go and look for some $400 million and take away to go and get crude into the country. And so what the gold for oil does is that instead of looking for the $400 million and taking away, you get your gold in cedis, and then you don't look for dollar. You simply take your gold to go and look for crude and bring into the country. So basically it's a strategy to reduce your need or your demand for oil. And that's why he's made a point that he thinks it's a program that we need to formalize and really intensify. And it's very important that we look at that because it was a midstream strategy that was introduced. And that's why sometimes when I hear some of the commentary from people like Professor Steve Mantia, as a professor.
Yeah,
Steve Mantia,
doctor.
I don't think it's something that we have to really fight so much. This was a strategy that was introduced midstream in the middle of a crisis. Surely there may be areas that we need to really tighten to really formalize it and institutionalize it.
He's more concerned about transparency.
He
says the deal is shrouded in secrecy.
I think he's overstretching it. And I like the fact that he rightly stated the cap he's wearing now. Because at this point, I think he's also mixing the caps. And I follow him on social media, I watch his comments. I don't think he's entirely objective on some of the issues that he raises. Because, I mean, we're in the space of RTI. You have a committee, right? Demand for it. There's law. If, for example, if for anything at all, it is true that you don't have access to this information, request for it. You will get it. The BOG and BOST actually produces weekly reports on gold for oil. There's nothing opaque about it. There's nothing, lack of transparency about it. It's there. So sometimes I think people like to create storms in teacups. And for example, even if there's a storm, request for the information. You get it and then you look at it. Why do you always assume wrongdoing because you don't know something? The fact that you have no information on something doesn't mean there is a wrongdoing. So before you conclude on the wrongdoing, be sure that you have all the information. I find it difficult when you tell me that I don't know about this, and yet I think it is this. It is corrupt because I don't know about it. The fact that you don't know about it doesn't mean it's corrupt. You understand? But tell me that I know about it, and that's why I'm sure it's corrupt. Otherwise, it's more like blackmail. I'm calling you corrupt so that you tell me what I want to know. You don't have to call me corrupt to tell me what you want to know. Request for it. We don't have to create chaos in our society at all times. This is information available. BOG, BOSS, they are generating reports week on gold for oil. If, for example, you have recommendations to make, which I think it's not out of place, This is a strategy that was introduced in the midst of a crisis. Okay? And the vice president yesterday said that we need to institutionalize it. And it's a fact that countries...
So what's the direct policy direction if you are going to institutionalize
No, but that's something that we're going to do. I mean, he said it.
Is it now at the formative stage or it is already part of your manifesto?
I mean, fortunately, it's something that we've been running in the past few months. And so it's quite easy to know the loose ends and tighten it to really institutionalize it. So it's part of our manifesto. And it's a complete value chain. So the vice president has said that we have the mineral resources. What is left is how we'll be able to safely, appropriately mine it and use it to build our economy. The UK, British pound, is strong because of gold. And yet they don't have gold. It's simply because they've been able to accumulate so much gold over the period. And so what he is saying is that we need to look at the value chain in its whole, holistically. Let's boost the minerals extraction sector. When we boost it, let's have a system where we are buying this not with dollar, buying it with our CD. It means that we are not looking for dollar for anything. And then when we get it, it is only when we have the gold, before gold for oil comes in place. If you don't have gold, you can't go take gold for any oil. So he says, I'll set up the Minerals Development Bank. Currently, when the Ghanaian person has a concession, the lands are ours. But even when we have the concessions, you don't have the money to mine these resources. So typically, we'll go abroad, look for foreign investors, and then the Ghanaian partner will take 10% or 5%. And the foreign investor will come and put in his money, mine, and take 80-90% away. It means that we're really getting nothing out of it. So let's get the Ghanaian ownership increased in the mineral exploration sector. Make sure the extraction sector, make sure that even not for anything at all, it's wholly Ghanaian owned, and it's in the manifesto. We want to have a lot more wholly Ghanaian owned concessions. And we are even making the geodata available for the locals so that it discourages them from going into the river bodies to go and mine. At the moment, they are going into the river bodies because, one, it's expensive to mine in the rocks and in the lands. In the river bodies, you mine, you wash it, you get something small, then you go away. And they will do it because they live on it. So tap that energy and redirect it positively by making sure that you give them the data, they know specifically where the mineral is, and then when they identify it, the land is for them. You give them the financial resource, the muscle, to be able to get the needed logistics and expertise to mine, which is the Minerals Development Bank. Then the next level is that once you've identified you have the data, you've identified the location of the land, you know ownership of the land, it is for you, you need licenses. He's giving clear-cut systems to reenact the license regime and simplify it and make it more convenient. And even get a lot more local participation, the traditional authorities, the district assemblies, so that the licensing regime becomes very convenient for the man that's living in some West Africa also has land and there is minerals in it. Once the licensing is sorted out, you go to the Minerals Development Bank, you get the financial support, you mine the gold locally. It is wholly owned, 100% owned by the Ghanaian person. The government will buy with CD. When government buys with CD, it helps to build our gold reserves and backs our currency to strengthen it. In
Talking
that case,
about our
we
currency,
can expand.
yeah.
He makes the point that in that case, we can expand even the barter trading. It may not only be for oil. There may be other things that we could now go. So that all we are trying to do is to reduce our demand, our looking, our search for dollar. And if we have something that we could use to get what we want, because whatever you're going to buy outside the country, you need to go and look for dollar.
Exactly.
To go and buy it.
So that's where the gold for oil deal comes in handy. So